Video games can do a lot of different things. That's an astoundingly obvious statement. They can tell great stories, give us unique experiences, and make us smile. Occasionally, they can even surprise us. And I say occasionally because it's not always an easy thing to do. For most players, buying a new game and being surprised by it can easily become a negative experience rather than a positive one. The price of new games has increased, but trust in developers hasn't gone up with it. You don't have to have any knowledge about game development to recognise that some AAA releases were just not ready to be put into the hands of the public, and yet they were anyway. Imagine going to see a big budget film and the actors forget their lines mid-scene. You can see the crew and their equipment in the background, and the green screens were literally just that, screens without the CG elements placed into them yet. It would be absurd, and so films rightfully never release in such unfinished states, and yet games frequently do, with the cost of entry being 6 times that of a movie ticket. And so, people obviously want to know as much about a game as possible before they buy it, to make sure it's actually worthwhile to do so. There's a huge market for reviews and gameplay videos, where you can meticulously weigh every element of a game to help you make a decision before actually trying it out for yourself. Games are assessed for how long they are, the quality of the art style and if they capitalise on it, and how the gameplay works and evolves across the game. All normal, understandable questions given the state of the industry, but still, it means most players know a lot more about the workings of a game before they play it than they know about a movie before they see it. This makes it really hard for games to surprise players. And on the other side of the table are the developers themselves, who throw another issue into the discussion. It sounds really cynical to say, but most big developers are in the industry to make money. I think it's fair to assume that almost every employee wants to put out a great game people will enjoy, but the further you zoom out of the business, the more it becomes just that, a business. And the best way of achieving that goal of making money is to make something that appeals to a lot of people. The easiest way to figure out what people want is to just look at what they enjoyed in the past. The secret recipe is to give people something very similar to what already exists, and tweak it just enough to justify buying this new product. The worst offenders for this type of design are probably sports games like FIFA and Madden, but you can see its influence in games like Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty too. People complain about the stagnation in design of all of these franchises, but they manage to sell millions of copies whenever a new entry gets released, so there's clearly something about the formula that does work. But what if you're not releasing a sequel to some already established franchise? Can you go wild and make something with a lot more creative freedom? That would be great, so of course the answer is no, you can't do that. New IPs still often have to take notes from the success of other series. If a brand new open world game launches tomorrow, you can comfortably bet it'll have some of the Ubisoft design philosophy for that genre. But the other risk with a brand new IP is that you've got to make it appealing to a lot of people, otherwise the risk in producing it might hamper its creation. In most cases, a creative project constructed around the every whim of the artist is most likely not going to appeal to everyone. So, when things in a project get a little bit too unpalatable for mainstream audiences, sometimes members of the non-creative team step in to get things back on track. And to be honest, this isn't always a bad thing. I think it's safe to say the Star Wars prequel films and special edition re-releases might have come out better overall if somebody had stopped George Lucas from doing whatever he wanted. But most of the time when you hear about higher-ups meddling with artistic vision, it brings to mind images of a poor, hard-working creator desperate to put out something great, and a big, fat cat who has all the real power and is only interested in how much money he can make from the toil of those underlings. You want the creator to win and put out something special they can be really proud of, and it's frustrating when they lose to the villainous big man. In reality, these situations are probably much more nuanced, but our brains love a good underdog story, and that's what they end up becoming in the public consciousness. I'm sorry this video has been really cynical up to this point. I don't think the creative industries are these burning piles of shite, but I think there are definite problems that have felt more prominently in focus several times throughout this year. So, into this downer of a backdrop comes Inscryption, an indie game created by Daniel Mullins and released in October of 2021. On the surface, it's a card game set in an escape room puzzle, with a dark tone and a brooding atmosphere. Play the game for a while though, and it becomes clear that there's a lot more lurking in its depths. The surprises start with twists on the gameplay formula. It's a card game, but the cards can talk to you. There's personalities and stories hidden in the objects you callously throw into an arena of life and death, and scratching away at what they seem to know will have you asking questions you didn't realize you needed the answers to. Established rules are then altered or outright broken, making every moment feel tense and captivating. Things escalate rapidly and the game throws some major curveballs at you. We're talking things that fundamentally alter everything about how the game works and how you experience it. I'm not going to say what those are, because a surprise is, by definition, something you don't expect. And it's the way the game masterfully uses the element of surprise that skyrocketed Inscryption to the top of my Game of the Year list. The first time I booted it up, I played for 5 hours straight. No other newly released game has been able to hook me in with such power, and the fact that I had to stop because of exhaustion rather than boredom or a desire to do something else is further testament to the power it had over me. Each surprise felt perfectly timed to keep me interested and further the mystery. I was desperate to get answers to the questions that had just been raised, but also just to see what new twist was going to happen next. And some people are most likely not going to like how the game progresses. It is pretty drastic, and it's absolutely fair to feel alienated and unhappy when faced with some of the late game. After I'd finished it, I definitely felt some parts were weaker than others, and that I preferred one section far more than the others. But given that backdrop of monetary concerns overriding artistic expression, I can't hold these feelings against the game. I get the impression these ideas were implemented exactly how Daniel Mullins wanted, and that feeling is so strong that I can't help but respect it and marvel at what he's pulled off. In the world of video games, surprises can often be a negative thing, but they don't always have to be. And when a game comes along and is able to prove that with such passion and skill, it's impossible not to applaud it and hold it up as a ward against all of those more depressing elements we opened up with. Inscryption has plenty of real gameplay to thrill you with, but it's the sheer confidence with which it uses mystery and surprise that really makes it stand out and mark it as a truly special game, and one that I think will become a classic, taking up space in many must-play lists of this year and in the future. So, go play Inscryption if you haven't already. I really don't think you'll regret it.